Hello and welcome to my tiny tarot practice. I'm Amelia Fruby, and on this show, we explore each card of the tarot with a tiny episode. We're currently in the 5th and final season of the podcast, where we're journeying through the major arcana. This season is sponsored by Tarot for Creative Spirits by Cecily Saylor, and you can head to the show notes to get an exclusive discount code for this amazing book. Today's card is Death. In the Rider-Waite-Smith edition of the tarot, the Death card features a skeleton in full armor on top of a white horse. They're holding a black flag, riding toward two pillars in the distance that feel very reminiscent of the pillars in the Moon card, even though we see the sun behind these pillars. And on this card, we see 4 figures. We see a person laying beneath the horse. We see a child and a person on their knees in front of the horse and Death. And we see a religious figure with their arms outstretched toward them. And many interpret these figures as representing different relationships to Death: avoidance, bargaining, receptivity, and honoring Death. Ways we can approach this eternal end. While the Death card can be quite literal, most tarot readers will argue that pulling the Death card in a reading does not mean that you or someone you know is going to die, but rather means that an ending is imminent. In the Creative Tarot, Jessa Crispin writes, "Death indicates an end of something. It is not essentially good or bad. It is valueless. The something that is ending could be something wonderful or something terrible. The end could bring pain or relief, but death is a definite end, not something that can be salvaged or negotiated with." I love those lines because there are so many stories in our society about ways that people try to negotiate with or cheat death. And the Death card in tarot really rebukes all of those, reminding us that death comes for us all, that there are always endings in life, that in fact everything must end. But within every ending is the seed of a new beginning. As Rachel Pollack reminds us in 78 Degrees of Wisdom, without death to clear away the old, nothing new could find a place in the world. Death breaks up old forms and makes way for the new. So this card then symbolizes an ending, but also ushers in the new. And I think we see that in the imagery of the card, in the way that the sun is hanging, centered between the two pillars in the distance. And at the angle it's at, it appears to be rising or setting. We don't know. How do we know if it's a rising sun or a setting sun when it's precisely at that moment lingering above the horizon? It's both. Once again, it's the both and, the beginning and the end. And death is that moment where we hang in the balance between beginning and end with the both and. With the 4 people in the card who are avoiding, bargaining with, receiving, or honoring death, we also see different responses to endings in our lives and different orientations toward grief. I think that our contemporary society is very death phobic, even as we are immersed in death. We refuse to face death even as people die daily of genocide, of pandemics, of climate change, of violence, and even of natural causes and old age. There is so much death in our world that we avoid or refuse to look at. But that doesn't have to be our approach to death. That doesn't have to be our approach to endings. We can learn to grieve. We can learn to be with the end, to be with death. And then we can invite in what's new and what comes after. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of my Tiny Tarot Practice. This season of the show is sponsored by Tarot for Creative Spirits by Cecily Saylor. This is a really powerful workbook that also takes you through the tarot card by card with descriptions of each card, as well as reflection questions and creative prompts. The entry for death includes some really beautiful questions about your relationship to death, as well as a prompt for creating a headstone that I found really powerful in my own practice. If you're interested in the book, you can head to the show notes to get an exclusive discount code for my Tiny Tarot Practice listeners. When you purchase the book, you're supporting this show, Cecily's work, and your own tarot practice. With this card, I invite us all to embrace what might be ending.